Howdy gamer, this video is going to be going over every single rune in League of Legends, and it's primarily intended for strictly for beginners of League of Legends. If you're not a beginner or at an intermediate level or have been playing the game for a long time, it's not the video for you. I have other rune videos you can click here that discuss champions in depth of basically those videos assume that you have a base understanding of the game and more than a base, like in a pretty good level of understanding on a specific champion, and then it can go more in depth with the runes there. This video is going to be talking about every single rune in League of Legends. So if that's what you're interested, that's what this video is for. And if you're looking for a specific rune, there's timestamps below the video. So generally, before we start, in League of Legends, your first step of choosing what to play is in the champion. And with the champion that you pick, the champion has their own stats, and then they have their own abilities. The abilities usually have some sort of scaling, whether it be through attack damage, ability power, or even tank stats like armor, magic resist, health, etc. So the champion has their own rules, basically. And then the second part is through runes, because every champion has to run runes. And then what the runes function as is usually they want to exacerbate what the champion's already good at. So a tank wants runes that help him be tankier and then get extra value for their tank stats. An assassin wants runes that help them kill champions and deal more damage in burst or when the enemy champion's low. An AD carry champion wants runes that help them deal more damage through auto attacks or have extra value through their auto attacks. And then mages, they want more poke damage. They want more utility in team fights or damage through their abilities. So what the runes function as is whenever you load into the game, you're always going to be playing with the same runes. The runes don't change throughout the entire game. So from start to finish, it's going to be the same runes. The runes have scaling aspects to them, which is why they still function at 10 minutes the same way they do at 40 minutes, but they'll be dealing more damage or making you tankier, etc. The way you get scaling in the game is through items. And with items, you give more value to your runes because they usually have scaling. And then the items make it so that you scale infinitely into the late game or throughout an entire match of League of Legends, right? So the way you can look at runes is kind of like they're items before you can buy items. So throughout the laning phase, the runes are going to be the most dominant factor of what your champion can do or what they can't do. So that's a pretty general way to look at them. And then throughout the entire game, again, you play with the exact same runes, and the runes give your champion value and then scale with the items. So that's that. As you can see, with runes, there's general categories for them, and that's also pretty helpful when trying to think about how to use them. Starting off with the first one, it's precision. The precision tree usually offers utility for champions that deal damage through their auto attacks. And then the domination tree is usually for burst champions, making it so that they deal more damage when they're on top of a champion. It helps them get on top of champions. It helps them deal more damage through landing a combination of their abilities in lane, or it helps them deal more damage to targets that are low. The sorcery tree is for adding utility and damage at the same time. Resolve tree is for basically just making a champion tankier, making them survive longer in fights, and gaining more utility through that. And then the inspiration tree, it's very hard to think about the inspiration tree if you're new to the game. Basically, with the inspiration tree, it's runes for champions that don't want to use any of these other trees. And those champions are pretty specific and also not beginner champions either. So it's not that important to think about the inspiration tree, as it's a pretty niche tree in itself, and the champions that use it are fringe altogether too. We'll be going over them, but that's generally you don't even have to think about this tree. It's primarily just these four. So starting off with the precision tree, the first keystone is press the attack. After hitting an enemy champion 3 times with your basic attack, you'll deal bonus damage and also make them vulnerable, increasing the damage they take by a percentage from all sources. So this is usually used as a trading tool for champions such as Vayne, Vayne, Kai'Sa, etc. Champions that want to take 3 autos as their trade and then back off, or whenever they start an all-in, like champions with high attack speed, they can proc this almost immediately as they're fighting the enemy, and then all damage they deal will be increased, and then all damage their team deals as well will be increased. So this usually just functions as like extra damage just for hitting the enemy 3 times, which is pretty nice for on-hit champions that don't function better because of extra attack speed or don't need the utility in healing or bonus stats from the other options in this tree. Next rune is going to be Lethal Tempo. 1.5 seconds after damaging an enemy champion, you gain 40 to 100% extra attack speed. You basically just get a lot more attack speed for 3 seconds, and then attacking an enemy champion extends the effects for 6 seconds. And then the cooldown on this is only 6 seconds. So whenever you hit a champion, champions like Varus, Kog'Maw, etc., like super hyper carry champions that once they hit the enemy once, they want to just keep rolling with the auto attacks, just auto over and over again. They want to use runes like this, so it makes it so that your all-ins are just way better, as you're going to be getting like 3, 4, 5, 6 more auto attacks off like as the fight progresses. And it's also generally ran on champions that can proc it without even having to auto attack. So they have like a minuscule effect, like let's say Kog'Maw E or Varus E, where you already slow the enemy and then you deal a little bit of damage, but then once this is procced, if they contest you with an auto attack, it's even stronger. So yeah. Next Keystone is going to be Fleet of Footwork. Attacking and moving builds up energy stacks. At 100 stacks, your next attack is energized. The energized attack heals you based off your level. I don't know if it's based off level, based off AD, and then grants you 20% movement speed. Healing for minions is reduced for ranged champions. This is basically like it's kind of like a utility rune as you're moving throughout the laning phase. It makes it so that if you take a 1 auto trade with the you have to think about this with AD carries too. If you take a 1 auto trade with the enemy, then it helps you kite away from them or kite into them. So it's both offensive and defensive, but it doesn't give you any extra damage. It just gives you healing and then movement speed. So if your champion's not getting more damage off from the movement speed, then it's generally not so useful. That and the healing on it is pretty minuscule, so you do have to get like reasonable position from this rune for it to outweigh just having an extra damage rune, for example. Next Keystone is going to be Conqueror. Basic attacks or spells that deal damage to enemy champions grant you 2. Hold on, back to Fleet of Footwork. With the energized stacks, you don't even have to keep track of this really. If you're moving and attacking with the champion, then you're just building up stacks. So it's not like super complicated, even though the explanation for it seems kind of weird. It's just like as you're fighting, this is going to proc and give you more movement speed and more healing. Conquer, basic attacks or spells that deal damage to enemy champions grant 2 stacks of Conquer for 8 seconds, giving you bonus adaptive force, so bonus AD or AP, stacking up to 10 times. Ranged champions stack it slower. When fully stacked, you heal for 15% of the damage you deal to champions. So this is like an all-in rune, as you have to build it up before it's even like fully active. So champions like bruisers really like this, as once they're on top of the enemy champion, they're there to stay, and then if the enemy contests them while the bruiser's on top of them, then they're going to be losing. And then most bruisers also have a healing aspect in their kit, so if you add extra healing from all damage dealt, then it's even better. It makes it so that the bruiser could tank 3, 4, even 5 champions throughout a team fight. Think about champions like Darius, Irelia, champions like that just get on top of enemies. Next rune is going to be Overheal. Excess healing on you becomes a shield for up to 10 plus 10% of your max health. Shield is built up from 20 to 100% of your excess healing from yourself and from an ally. This is primarily ran on AD carry champions because around 2nd and 3rd recall you get a lifesteal item, and then the shield in the lane makes it so that if the enemy trades onto you, you already have a shield. So imagine like half a Janna shield, and then you're already on top of them. So if they take a trade, they have to break the shield before they can even get to your normal HP. And then once they have got to that, you also have lifesteal usually. So it's like a dominant laning tool that is viable on few champions that actually want to build lifesteal early in the bot lane. It can also be used on the bruiser champions that have extra healing in their kit, such as Akali. But primarily it's just an AD carry rune that makes it so that enchanters benefit from this too, as their AD carry will just have a bigger shield. Even if their heals aren't like healing the AD carry, their heals can grant their AD carry a shield as well, which is super weird. But yeah, primarily a laning tool and then a team fighting tool. Triumph takedowns. Takedowns restore 12% of your missing health and grant an additional 20 gold. If this rune didn't even have the additional 20 gold part, it would still be a pretty good rune. This makes it so that champions that survive an all-in by like that much do it a lot safer. It also makes it so that 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s become more in the favor of the team that's already winning. Because if that one champion is just barely surviving in a skirmish, then it's really, really bad for the enemy. So yeah, being able to survive from getting a kill, even if like you're low on health and an enemy's on top of you, is super valuable in fights, and then also in skirmishes early in the game. Coming into season 10, Presence of Mind was changed. It used to give you mana back and then give you ultimate CDR reduction, and now Presence of Mind on takedowns restores 20% of your maximum mana or energy, and then it also increases your maximum mana by 100 and then your maximum energy by 10, so up to 50 and then up to 500 mana, and then that's based on takedowns. So 5 kills, you're at max stacks on either champion, a mana or an energy champion. This is pretty big for champions that use energy, Zed, Akali, Kennen, etc., as those champions are balanced around their energy gate. So they're not supposed to be able to cast their abilities multiple times, but they can, because if they have this stacked, because they'll just have more energy than they would otherwise have, which is super weird. For champions that would run this for mana would be usually like control mages, that champions that would greatly benefit from it, like that greatly benefit from mana. Champions like Kassadin, Rise, etc. Because if the mana is just like an accessory, then it's not really required. But if the mana gives you extra stats like it does Rise, or if it gives you way more utility like it does Kassadin, then it becomes way, way higher value. So interesting new rune. In the precision tree, the last 3 runes are all scaling runes. So starting off with Legend Alacrity, you gain 3% attack speed plus an additional 1.5 every stack. You earn stacks by getting kills, assist, killing objectives, dragons, Rift Herald, killing large monsters, so any jungle camps, and then minion kills. So basically just through farming or winning, like in any sense, other than getting like tower kills, is going to help stack up all of these runes. And then with Legend Alacrity, it gives you attack speed. With Legend Tenacity, it's going to give you Tenacity. Tenacity being Tenacity is like a resistance to CC. So if let's say you get hit by a thresh hook, the more tenacity you have, the less time the thresh hook lasts. You get Leona stunned, same thing. It just reduces the time that you're actually stunned by a stun ability. Tenacity doesn't work on knockups. That's like basically it. So all other CC you're going to be resisting more with this. Legend Bloodline is going to give you lifesteal, and then again it just stacks up. So like even though you get these stats, you don't really feel them until mid game. So it's not like super pivotal that you get one or the other. It's usually just like what you want to end up with come mid game. For most AD carries, it's going to be attack speed. For most tanks, it's going to be tenacity. And then for AD carries that would run lethal tempo, or again just don't need the attack speed, then it's going to be bloodline, as the lifesteal would outweigh the attack speed because you already get so much free attack speed from this. Next rune is going to be Coup de Grace. You deal 8% more damage to champions who have less than 40% health. Basically like a finishing rune, but then you can also look at this as a rune that helps you either make or break a fight, because if you're an AD carry champion that's attacking another AD carry and then they have this and you don't, it's kind of awkward, as they're just dealing more damage to you, like for the last couple of autos, than you are to them. It's not like a super high value rune, but it is okay, as again just dealing more damage to targets who are low help actually finish them off versus not. Against champions that have like a lot of sustain or like can flip their health like completely, champions like Vladimir, when you're playing against enchanter supports too, because they can heal their allies, but if you finish them off completely, then they can't be healed or resurrected, whatever. Cut down deals 5% to 15% more damage to champions based on how much more max health they have than you. Bonus damage scales linearly against enemies with 10% to 100% more max health than you. Basically, you run this against tanks, as champions that have a lot of auto attacks can hit tanks a lot of times, and then it eventually you have just deal more damage per auto / per ability, and then you'll eventually just actually deal meaningful damage versus not. So anytime you'd be against like a massive champion like Cho'Gath, Scion, etc., like a rune like this has so much value, man. Last Stand, deal 5% to 11% increased damage to champions while you are below 60% health. Max damage gained at 30% health. So basically champions, this is mostly for bruisers, right? As they're going to be on top of multiple champions, and then they're going to be like surviving to the last bits of HP and still dealing a lot of damage. Not really an AD carry rune unless say they have an enchanter support behind them, but even then, they're probably just like max health anyways. So think about champions like Tryndamere, Irelia, Darius. They make the most use out of a rune like this. It's so strong on champions like that, where they're not like exactly dead, but they're almost dead, but then they're dealing more damage because of it. Yeah. Olaf, Darius, Irelia, etc. make really good use of runes like that. So that's the precision tree. In all rune trees, no matter what different category you go in, you're going to have these adaptive stats. So let's go over them. The first option, and you can only choose one per row. So the first option you're going to have is Adaptive Force. This is AD or AP, Attack Speed, or Scaling CDR. Most champions are going to take Adaptive Force as it's just the easiest. Even some tank champions would take the Adaptive Force as it lets them start with either extra AD or AP. So that helps them earlier in the game than something like maybe Attack Speed or CDR would. With the attack speed, every AD carry is going to run this, as you don't get attack speed anywhere else in these runes. And then you can go adaptive later. Some tanks would take this as well, as it would help them either clear the jungle or in the support role clear wards, or maybe get their attacks off faster. And then in the top lane, it would help you with pushing the wave, trading, etc. The CDR rune's kind of unique in the sense that it's a scaling rune in this row. It gives you about 3 CDR, 3% cooldown reduction, level 6, and then it gives you about 6% CDR level 12, and then once you get to level 18, you get the full 10, but at most games, you're only going to be benefiting from it at level 6 and level 12. So the champions that would run a rune like this would be champions like Vladimir, who don't have mana, they don't have energy, but they're just entirely gated by their cooldowns, and it's usually like scaling champions too. So that's an interesting way to think about that. And then the next row is going to be the same thing. You can choose from Adaptive Force, Armor, or Magic Resist. Most champions are going to go, again, Adaptive Force in this row, as the Adaptive Force makes it so that you just have more damage early. A tank champion could run double stats, where it would say be Attack Speed, Armor, Armor. But then in the second row, you have the option of running Armor, Magic Resist. But then in the third row, you have the option of Health, Armor, and Magic Resist. So if you're a champion that's trying to endure things early, you would run either Adaptive Force, Attack Speed, and then Armor and Magic Resist. A standard AD carry would run something like Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, Armor, as they're in a duo lane. They want the Armor to deal with the enemy's AD's damage. They could also take physical damage from the enemy's support, and then Attack Speed, Adaptive Force to give them more attacks, and then more damage on their attacks. A mage would usually run something like Adaptive Force, and then in the last row, they would run resistances based on their matchup. So let's say Annie versus Orianna, right? Annie could run Magic Resist to help endure the magic damage she's going to be taking from Orianna. If she's against Zed, she could run armor to help negate the damage from Zed. And then if she's in a matchup that would outpush her or outrange her completely, like let's say Aurelion Soul, she could run health, as this health is a scaling rune as well, as you get more per level. So if you're not interacting with your lane or don't have to fight them early, then health is an okay option. So that's all the adaptive runes. There's not like wild variants on them. Usually most pages will just look like this, where it's adaptive force, and then armor. And then AD carries would look like this. And then depending on the matchups in solo lanes, it would be either armor or magic resist most of the time. So that's that. Going into the domination tree, domination is primarily for assassins and usually junglers, basically. Champions that want to get on top of the enemy and kill them, that's what this tree is for. So, starting with the Keystone Electrocute, hitting a champion with 3 separate attacks or abilities within 3 seconds deals bonus damage, and then this is on a 20-second cooldown. So you can look at this as like a trading tool. In the laning phase, if you land 2 abilities in an auto attack, you can proc it. If you land 2 abilities in an ignite, you can proc it. Or if you just land 3 abilities altogether, then you can proc it. The damage dealt is pretty significant. It doesn't outweigh like something in the sorcery tree in terms of poke, but the burst damage that you can apply immediately with it will help you put yourself in lethal. So what that means is champions like Zed, Talon, etc., they need to get the enemies so low so that they can actually assassinate them. And then with Electrocute, it helps you do that. And it can help you do it from 100 to 0 too. It doesn't have to be like you take a trade in lane and then they're low and then you wait 20 seconds and then you all in again. Come later in the game, the Electrocute will help you just burst an enemy outright, even through heals and shields. So that's what Electrocute's for. Predator, basically what Predator is, it makes it so that your boots have an active, you use the active, and then you gain bonus movement speed, and your first hit on an enemy deals bonus damage. It's a fairly long read, but that's basically what it does. Champions that want to use this are usually junglers like Gragas. Can't even think of another one, man. Champions that want to get in range and then deal a lot of damage once. So, and then wait on their cooldowns. So champions like Gragas, you could also use it on roaming champions mid lane, such as Annie, as they could just leave the lane entirely and then zoom into another lane and then attack them there. So, but the way it functions primarily is like applying a lot of burst and then also helping you get on top of the enemy. It's a fairly hard rune to use, and if you're new to the game, I just don't recommend it. It takes a good amount of experience, and then it also takes a lot of practice and a lot of precision in a particular match. And the cooldown on it is very significant, so yeah. Dark Harvest, you deal damaging a champion below 50% health, deals bonus adaptive damage, and then harvests their soul. Permanently stacking Dark Harvest's damage by 5. The Dark Harvest damage is based on level plus souls plus bonus AD / bonus AP, and then it's on a 45-second cooldown. But if you get a kill or assist, then the cooldown is reduced to 1.5 seconds. So basically, it's up right as you get a kill and assist, kill or assist. With Dark Harvest, it's for champions that either that can already kill a champion without the extra damage from Electrocute, and then by doing so, every time they damage the champion who's either low or kills them outright, then they're going to be getting more damage on the Dark Harvest proc. So it's kind of like a win more rune for assassins, but some assassins only benefit from that anyways. So once you get the ball rolling with Dark Harvest, it just keeps building up and building up and building up. Champions that like to use this are champions usually in the jungle role, as they don't need a laning tool such as Electrocute. So champions like Graves, Karthus, champions like Kha'Zix, where once they get it rolling, once they farmed up a little early, and then they start actually attacking lanes, if they start winning, then they just keep winning more and more and more. So very interesting, as it's like a scaling rune for assassins, and especially assassins in the jungle, as they don't need laning tools such as Electrocute. Next rune is going to be Hail of Blades. Hail of Blades is a pretty fringe rune. It's kind of funny the way it functions, and you can kind of make an argument for it for all champions, where it's like it's not bad, but it's usually outweighed by other runes. So what Hail of Blades does is it gives you 110% attack speed when you attack enemy champions, up to 3 attacks. So you attack them once, and then it procs, or as you're attacking them once, it procs, and then your next 2 to 3 attacks will basically come out really, really fast. No more than 2 seconds can elapse between attacks or this effect will end, and then the cooldown on it is only 4 seconds out of combat. After attack resets, increased attack limit by 1, allowing you to temporarily exceed the attack speed limit. So it's kind of like lethal tempo, but it doesn't scale, and it's generally really hard for champions to use this rune, as you have to get on top of the enemy or be in range of them and then attack 3 times. The only champion I can think that actually uses this rune is Xin Zhao in the jungle, as whenever he ganks, his Q has to be procced 3 times before he knocks up the enemy. So he dashes onto the enemy, auto attack, and then the Q will knock them up then. So unless your champion has abilities where their third auto attack really matters, then Hella Blades is really bad for most champions. So that's that. Yeah, the second row in the domination tree is kind of like it's either extra damage, extra sustain in lane, or an all-in tool. So starting with Cheap Shot, damaging champions with impaired movement or actions deals bonus true damage, and then this is only on a 4-second cooldown. So if the enemy champion is slowed or CC'd, and you don't have to slow them or CC them, that's pretty important. Just if they are slowed or CC'd, then Cheap Shot deals extra true damage to them. So champions that have a trading tool that can slow the enemy before damaging them again can obviously make use out of this. Tanks can even make use out of this rune. And then with the true damage, where even though it's like a small amount, like 10 to 45 true damage based on level, even though this is a small amount, like it being true damage is super, super strong. And where it's only on a 4-second cooldown too, you could proc this like 2 to 3 times throughout an all-in. So think of it like that. It's just more damage if these other 2 runes aren't as valuable. The next rune being Taste of Blood. Heal when you damage an enemy champion, and then it's on a 20-second cooldown. The heal's based on like level, and then also on bonus AD and AP, but very small amounts. This, in combination with this rune, gives you a lot of healing. But what Taste of Blood basically is like a it makes laning easier basically, because you're just at higher HP values for like even just like an auto attack would proc Taste of Blood. So a laning tool that makes laning easier. Not really required on most champions, but usually the champions that would run it wouldn't run Cheap Shot or Sudden Impact. Next rune, Sudden Impact, after exiting stealth or using a dash, leap, blink, or teleport. So if you use a dash, a flash, even a teleport, then you're going to proc this. Dealing any damage to a champion grants you 7 lethality and 6 magic penetration for 5 seconds. And this is only on a 4-second cooldown. So most champions that would run this would be champions that are like all-inning once they dash. So Zed, Talon, Kha'Zix, Graves could run this. Trying to think of assassins. Any champion with a dash, usually assassin champions, as they can make use of the lethality, and then they also want the extra lethality to help them like actually be able to kill a champion. Maybe Diana, right? Cassidon, etc. And then where this is on such a low cooldown, it can be used basically at all stages. Something interesting to note with Sudden Impact though is like most players don't know that it also applies with stealth. So champions like Kha'Zix, champions like Twitch that can constantly be using stealth, even Evelynn, like will always have value from this no matter what, versus having to spend your jump. Because usually with assassin champions, if you're spending your dash ability, then you're committing yourself 100%. So you have to be careful with that. These next 3 runes in the third row, pretty similar to Precision. They're your scaling versions of runes. All 3 of these offer bonus AD or AP, and the only difference with them is how you earn it. So with Zombie Ward, once you place a ward, once you kill an enemy ward, you'll sprout a zombie ward that lasts 1 minute, and then that gives you bonus AD and AP. With Ghost Portal, once you place a ward, whenever that ward dies, then it places a Ghost Poro. Ghost Poro is basically just like a ward. It gives you extra vision around an area, but it goes away if the enemy walks over that area. And then again, it gives you bonus AD or AP. Eyeball Collection gives you bonus AD or AP based on your kills and assist. All three of these will give you a max of 30 AP, and I don't know how much AD. It might be 30 or 25-ish. But the differences between how you earn them is either kills and assist, placing wards, or destroying wards. That's how you should think about these. Fourth row is going to be another version of scaling runes, and then they offer different utility, usually for basically for all purposes, really. It's not just for assassins. So starting off with Ravenous Hunter, heal for a percentage of damage dealt by your abilities, healing by 1.5 plus 2.5 per bounty hunter stack. What a bounty hunter stack is, and it applies to all of these runes, is just an individual takedown. So you have to kill, let's say you kill the support, AD, mid, jungle, top. Like, those are all individual bounty stacks, basically. And by getting those, you're going to be getting extra value on all these runes. And in Ravenous Hunter's case, you'll be getting bonus healing. So you kill the support, you get plus 2.5 bonus healing on your abilities. If you kill the support again, it won't give you that. You've already earned the support, right? But if you kill the AD, you get another 2.5 extra healing, etc. Ingenious Hunter, gain 15% active item CDR plus an additional 5% per bounty hunter stack. Basically what Ingenious Hunter is for your active items, obviously, but if your active item isn't like wildly useful, then it's not really required, and then you would get more value out of the other options. So champions that like to use this are like champions that would run Glacial Augment and then be spamming Twin Shadows and GLP. That's like the best use of it in the game. The other champions that could run it would be assassin champions that want to use Ghostblade a lot. I guess it's not really that good. Maybe a champion that wants to use Zhonya's a lot. For support champions, it also doesn't make a lot of sense, as by the time you complete the active items that you would get the CDR for, you might not even have all the bounty stacks like make it useful, and then the extra CDR on it might not be useful if you're not team fighting at the particular time in which you bought the CDR to like make it lower, etc. Basically, it's just for Glacial Augment champions that want to get more slows off. Relentless Hunter, gain 10 out of combat movement speed plus 9 per stack. This is pretty generally useful for every assassin, as they want to be moving around the map a lot. It can also be useful for junglers, as once they clear their camps, it helps them get back. It helps them get into a lane faster. It helps them get back onto the map faster after they reset or die. And then it also helps them just generally move around the map a lot faster. And the faster that a jungler is in position, the better position they usually are in. So roaming champions, assassin champions, and then junglers are primarily the user of Relentless Hunter. And then the more kills they get, the faster they get to move around the map. Ultimate Hunter, your ultimate gains 5% reduced cooldown plus additional 4% per bounty stack. This rune's pretty useless for most champions. I can't really think of a champion that even really likes to run this rune, because if they're running this over bonus movement speed, item CDR, or healing, they're a really weird champion. So that's that. Ravenous Hunter is the best rune in this row, as the extra healing on abilities is super wild, even for an assassin champion. Like, being able to just survive / take better trades in lane is so good. So that's the domination tree. Primarily assassins would run adaptive force armor. Okie dokie. Going into the sorcery tree. Sorcery tree is primarily for mages / supports, champions that have like better AP scaling, and then usually champions, that just scale a whole lot, and then it helps them spike come mid game. So first Keystone is going to be Summon Aerie. Your attacks and abilities send Aerie to a target, damaging the enemies or shielding allies. So if you damage the enemy, you deal extra damage, and then if you shield your ally, you get a bigger shield, basically is how this rune functions. And then the cooldown of it is based for how long it takes Aerie to come back to you. So Aerie is basically like this pixie, and then you attack an enemy, it goes out, and then it slowly comes back to you. And then once it comes back to you, you have it again. And then you can use it to deal more damage to the enemy, or whenever you shield and heal an ally, it'll give them a bigger shield or a shield just for healing your ally. So this is primarily a support rune for enchanter champions like Sona, Lulu, Janna, etc., where they want to be damaging early and then transition into a shielding and protecting role later. And that's exactly what this rune does. With Aerie, though, it can also just be used as a poke rune in lane. You could see it on champions like Jace top, champions that like actually have poke abilities that can build up over and over in a laning phase and then actually set up a lethal. They could run summon Aerie in the laning phase, even though they don't have like healing and shielding abilities to help their allies. This rune would only be to like deal more damage to the enemy. Champions like Teemo can make really good use out of Aerie just for the extra damage it gives them against their lane opponent. Next rune is going to be Arcane Comment. Damaging a champion with an ability hurls a comment at their location. Or if Arcane Comment is on cooldown, reduces its remaining cooldown. So this is only on a 20-second cooldown, and then it gets lower per level, and then every time you damage an enemy with an ability, then it reduces the cooldown as well. So this is primarily for like control mages, as they hit one ability, the Arcane Comment will proc, and then they hit more abilities, and then it reduces the cooldown, and then if they hit more abilities after that, then they'll be able to proc this multiple times in a fight. So think about champions like Syndra, Xerath, Zyra, etc. They're going to be making the best use out of a rune like this, as it can proc multiple times in a team fight. That and the Arcane Comment is actually AoE. So it comes down, and then all champions hit by it are damaged. It's not like the biggest hitbox, but it can, if you're spending your abilities on a tank, even if their carries behind it, they can still be damaged by this, versus runes like Domination. Like if you electrocute, then it's on cooldown, and then if you spent electrocute on a tank, then it's not good. You're just on cooldown and dealing less damage. But Arcane Comment, it can hit all champions. The cooldown can be reduced for casting more abilities, so it's a pretty good rune, and the champions that run it usually get pretty good value out of it. The only downside of it is that if you don't have a slow or a CC in your kit, then maybe the Arcane Comment won't actually land, because this is a projectile. So let's say if you just Teemo Q someone, or if you like hit them with an ability from an AD carry, the Arcane Comment will fall and then just straight up miss them. So if it's not a slow or something, then the Arcane Comment can just strictly miss. So that's why not every single champion in the game runs this. Phase Rush. Hitting an enemy champion with 3 attacks or separate attacks within 3 seconds grants you bonus movement speed based on level and 75% slow resist. And this is only on a 15-second cooldown. So this is for champions that don't need the extra damage in lane and then want to run away. So usually mid laners, top laners, usually control mages in top lane, and then control mages mid lane, champions like Orianna in the mid lane, and then like champions like Ryze in the top lane, where even if the enemy jungler is ganking them, if they proc this, they can just simply walk right past them usually. So it's like an aggressive utility Keystone. Most beginner champions don't even have to worry about this Keystone, as it's more advanced, and yeah, it's just more advanced and primarily a defensive tool. So yeah. Nullifying Orb. When you take damage that would reduce your health below 30%, you gain a shield that absorbs 40 to 120 magic damage based on level, and then based on a little bit of AP and AD for 4 seconds. And this is only on a 60-second cooldown. So if you're against champions that have a humongous amount of like AP burst, champions like Karthus, Vigar, Akali, etc., then running a rune like this helps you survive them. And it's pretty deceptive too, because the enemy has to check if you're running it too. So defensive control rune basically is what that is. Mana flow ban. This rune's very common. Is like you can kind of make an argument for every single champion in the game wanting just a little bit of extra mana. Hitting an enemy champion with an ability permanently increases your maximum mana by 25 up to 250. So basically a free sapphire crystal. After reaching 250 mana, restore 1% of your missing mana every 5 seconds. So basically hit the enemy champions with abilities throughout the laning phase, build this up, have extra mana come mid game, and then have extra mana regen too. Every mage loves this rune, as the more mana they have, the more damage they can deal, because the more abilities they have up, right? Some AD carries like this rune, champions like Varus who have actual poke abilities and then can build it up in the laning phase too, like this rune. Even tanks can like this rune, as they can build it up and then just have extra mana without having to purchase it. So that's interesting. Very common rune though. Nimbus Cloak. After casting a summoner spell, gain a movement speed increase that lasts for 2.5 seconds and allows you to pass through units. Increase 15% to 35% movement speed based on summoner spell's cooldown. Higher the summoner spell cooldown grants more movement speed. So basically, if you're casting a summoner spell, it makes it so that you gain more movement speed. Champions that like to use this are primarily junglers, as they can just smite you and then get extra movement speed. So let's say blue smite slows you, Nimbus Cloak procs, they get more movement speed. It can also be used as a defensive tools for, let's say, AD carry champions, where they can flash away and then get more movement speed to run away faster, or they use heal and then they get even more movement speed, not just from the heal but from Nimbus Cloak itself. Control mages can use this. As they're getting ganked, they can use cleanse or barrier, and then they'll get bonus movement speed just for using those summoner spells as well. Yeah, the only champions who really can't use it are top laners, as once they either have their flash or their teleport, one or the other. But even then, it could be used as an aggressive summoner spell for a top laner, as they could teleport in and then have more movement speed to get on top of whoever's like they've teleported in to fight. Generally useful rune. A lot of champions like it. Pretty similar to Mana Flow Ban. Third in this row, all these in the sorcery tree in the third row, it's kind of like pick whichever one is like best for your champion. So CDR, movement speed, attack damage, or AP. With Transcendence, you gain 10% CDR when you reach level 10, and then exceeding the CDR cap gives you bonus stats. Control mages like this, as in the mid lane, those champions get to level 10 very, very quickly. Champions like Syndra, Orianna, etc. And then supports can like this, enchanter supports that are just scaling anyways, as the more CDR, or they can just get 10% CDR for free, so not having to buy it can be really, really valuable for enchanter supports. But yeah, it's basically like you're going to get so much CDR from, let's say, Ludens on a mage support, and then having the 10% CDR gives you to 30%, and then if you buy any extra, then it's going to become extra ability power as well. Celerity. Celerity is a pretty niche rune. If the champion doesn't have any movement speed buff in their own kit, then usually this rune's pretty bad. All movement speed bonuses are 7% more effective, and you gain 1% extra movement speed. Pretty bad. Really bad for most champions. I'm trying to think of a champion that runs it, man. Like Janna comes to mind, but even with her, these other two options are just better. Yeah. Yeah, it's a rune. It exists. Absolute Focus. While above 70% health, gain adaptive. It basically gain bonus AD or bonus AP based on level. This is for champions that are like always at full health. So again, control mages like to use this, as they're just blasting their abilities off from a distance. Enchanter supports like to use this, as they're existing in the backline and not taking damage, so they always get a benefit from the extra ability power or the extra AD. And then, yeah, that's primarily the champions that use it, usually mages and whatnot. And the fourth row is going to be Scorch. The next damaging ability hit sets champions on fire, dealing bonus magic damage based on level after 1 second. Cooldown 10 seconds. So this is like an extra poke tool, because if you're already running Airy or Arcane Comet, these two let you build up poke on the enemy, and then Scorch does the exact same thing, but pretty deceptively, as it's not a Keystone and it won't have like a visual effect to it, really. A visual effect like as noticeable as Summon Airy being shot at you, or an Arcane Comet falling on you. So this, in combination with Arcane Comet and Airy, helps champions build up poke on the enemy and then either push them out of lane or kill them altogether. But the trade-off of this rune is usually for Gathering Storm, and what Gathering Storm does is every 10 minutes you gain bonus AD or AP. And then this is basically like the perfect rune for champions like AD carries and control mages, as they want the game to go as long as possible because they'll just keep getting items and keep getting stronger. So the real benefit of this rune is like at 30 minutes, whenever you get 48 AP or 29 AD. It's really, really strong. The middle option is water walking, gain 25% bonus or 25 movement speed and adaptive bone. You basically gain movement speed and AD or AP in the river. So basically only junglers run this. That's that. Champions like Elise that want to gank a lot and exist in the river, perfect for them. And then champions that want to fight around Dragon or Baron, just helps them more. So that's that. That's the sorcery tree. A lot of utility mixed with like damage and scaling is usually what you're going to get from that tree. Fourth tree is going to be the resolve tree. With the resolve tree, all the runes are primarily function to make you more durable. And then even though they're designed to make you more durable, some champions can use durability like as damage and whatnot. So starting off with the Keystone, Grasp of the Undying. Every 4 seconds in combat, your next basic attack on enemy champions will deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health. It will heal you for 2% of your max health and then permanently increase your health by 5. And then ranged champions get a lesser value from Grasp of the Undying. So this is basically just a trading tool for top laners, like top lane tank champions such as Cho'Gath, Poppy, etc., where once you hit a minion or hit the enemy champion after 4 seconds, if you hit them again, then if you hit the enemy champion again, then you're going to heal for a bit and deal a little more damage. So even though with most tank champions, their cooldowns are very long. So you take one trade and then you're basically all your abilities are on cooldown. But Grasp of the Undying won't be. So if the enemy continues to trade onto you, then you have this to like offset the damage that they've dealt, or you have a bigger punish for landing more of your abilities, and then you can just deal more damage to the enemy while also recovering more HP. So it can be a rune that helps you win a matchup more or help you lose a matchup less, which is very interesting. Only tank top laners run this though. You won't see it anywhere else as the values is just outweighed by every other rune for the other champions. Like you would think a rune like this would be pretty good on ADCs, but the precision keystones just heavily outweigh it. Next rune is going to be Aftershock. After immobilizing an enemy champion, increase your armor and magic resist by 35 plus 80% of your bonus resistances for 2.5 seconds. Then explode, dealing magic damage to nearby enemies. So basically, once you CC an enemy, you're going to be tankier for a bit and then also deal a little bit more damage if you're on top of them. Champions that like to use this are primarily supports, champions like Alistar, Leona. It could also be used on tank junglers like Zac. You could even use it top lane on champions like maybe... usually top laners want Grasp instead, actually. But primarily it's for the supportive tank champions. So even if it's a tank jungler or a tank solo laner, champions like Zac, Rammus, Sion, etc., like if they can build a lot of stats and still be useful, then this rune can be pretty useful on them. That and then the extra damage offered helps your allies actually like kill a target, because usually again once you proc this, you're gonna usually be on top of the enemy champion as you're CCing them, and the champions that would run this would be champions that get on top of the enemy to CC them. So pretty oppressive rune, really one of the best runes in the game, as it just has so much synergy with the champions that run it, and then it has so much just so much synergy as those champions already want to build armor and magic resist, and then Aftershock gives them more value for building armor and magic resist. Very good rune. Guardian. Guard allies within 175 units of you, basically 2.5 Teemos or 2.5 minions, and allies you target with spells for 2.5 seconds. While guarding, if you or an ally take damage, both of you gain a shield and are hasted for 1.5 seconds. The cooldown on this being a little over a minute and then getting lower the more levels you have. The shield being based on your bonus AP and then your maximum amount of a percentage of your bonus health. I thought it was maximum health. So that's interesting. And then it gives you a flat 20% movement speed. This rune is primarily used by enchanter supports whenever they're played against... by enchanter supports, I mean like shielding supports. So whenever they're played into engage supports. So let's say Janna, Morgana, maybe Lulu, whenever they're being played into champions like Alistar, Leona, because if they're playing backline, they can shield their ally once their ally gets engaged on, and then give them this extra shield, so they get effectively 2 shields, and then the extra movement speed to move away from the enemy that's engaging on them. Yeah. The other champion that I can think of that would use this rune would be Ivern, basically a Janna of the jungle. No solo lane runs this, and yeah, of course carry champions don't run this as it's a protective rune. So it's a pretty good rune, but not many champions can actually use it that well. Demolish. Charge up a powerful attack against... It basically just gives you more damage on towers. Once you're close to a tower, it builds up these stacks, so you basically wait a couple seconds, and then once you hit the tower, one attack deals a lot of damage. This rune really fell out of favor as coming into Season 10, turret plates are worth less. So unless you're playing a tank top laner that can't make use of these other two, Font of Life or Shield Bash, then you usually don't see this rune anymore. It's just not that good compared to the other options. But what it offers is just more damage to towers. A champion like Nasus, I suppose, could still use this rune to a pretty good effect. Font of Life, impairing the movement of an enemy champion marks them for 4 seconds. Ally champions who attack marked enemies heal for 5 plus 1% of your max health over 2 seconds. So this being only over 2 seconds means that it can proc 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 times throughout a team fight or throughout a skirmish in lane. Primarily, the champions that are going to use this are tank supports as they can get use of it at all stages of the game. Because once they CC a target or slow them, then their AD carry can be healing. Like a tank jungler could run this like Zac, but he has to gank a lane to get value out of it. A tank support's just going to be existing in lane regardless, so anytime they fight, they're going to be getting value out of it, versus a Zac who might just only be farming for a considerable amount of time. So pretty good support rune, and once you start, like, the numbers might look pretty low on this for some of you, as like you might only get value out of it in a team fight, but like come mid game, you're going to go from only one ally proccing this being your AD carry to all 4 of your allies proccing this in team fights. That's when you really start getting value out of this rune, and the numbers can like get way higher. Shield Bash. While shielded, gain armor and magic resist, a pretty negligible amount. Whenever you gain a new shield, your next basic attack against an enemy champion deals bonus damage based on level, based on bonus health, and based on the percentage of the shield you gain as bonus adaptive damage. You have up to 2 seconds after the shield expires to use this effect. So champions that are either like bruisers or tanks that have shields themselves can make use out of this rune. There's not really a bot lane duo who runs this just to run it. Like, let's say a Vayne with a Janna doesn't run Shield Bash just to get the Shield Bash proc. The damage isn't that like impactful. But champions that have shields and like trade naturally in lane anyways get pretty good value out of this. So champions like Camille, Riven in the top lane, champions like Nautilus in the bot lane. Yeah, that's all that I can really think about. Champions that would actually be able to trade in the laning phase and then get value out of the damage from this rune. Third row, conditioning. After 10 minutes, gain 9 armor and magic resist and increase your armor and magic resist by 5%. This is for champions that would scale otherwise and don't even have to participate in the laning phase. Champions like Braum, champions like tank junglers who don't make value out of second wind or bone plating anyways. So champions like that want to spike in the mid game, and if they're not punished for being weak early, then they become so strong. So it's like a necessary scaling rune for supportive tank champions such as Zac, Rammus, Braum, maybe even Leona, etc. Second Wind. After taking damage from an enemy champion, heal for 4% of your missing health, plus 6 over 10 seconds. So Second Wind's a super strong rune for bruisers or tank champions in the laning phase. For bruisers top lane, if you're into a ranged matchup, then it helps you sustain the extra damage that the enemy gets to deal with you because they have the advantage that they're ranged. But if they don't kill you or like get tower plates or force you out of lane, then their entire advantage of being ranged becomes flipped come mid game because your base stats outscale him, and then second wind helps you get to that point. Same thing for any mid laner or support that would run this rune, as it makes you just have more HP throughout a laning phase, no matter what, like if the enemy damages you or not. Bone plating. After taking damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks received from them deal 30 to 60 less, again based on level, and then the duration being 1.5 seconds. But then the cooldown on this is 45 seconds. So this is like a one-time block for a pretty significant amount of time. Pretty significant amount of time throughout the laning phase. Second wind only has like basically a 10-second cooldown. Bone plating being 45 seconds means like it's basically just used for melee champions to win an all-in. So if they get engaged on or engage on the enemy, then the enemy's dealing less damage overall. So that's how you should look at it. In top, mid, or bot lane, it helps melee versus melee matchups be won by just effectively having more HP because of the damage that bone plating blocks. Overgrowth. Absorb life essence from monsters or enemies that die near you, permanently gaining 3% max health for every 8 seconds, or every 8. When you've absorbed 120 monsters or enemy minions, gain an additional 3.5 maximum health. So for most champions, this gives you about a ruby crystal just for running it. It's basically just impossible not to get it fully stacked up before a laning phase ends. As if you're top lane and running it, you're always going to be existing near minions. If you're jungler and running it, you're always going to be killing monsters and then maybe be absorbing minions as well. And then if you're support, same thing. You're going to be around minions that are dying, and then it's going to stack up pretty fast. So, and then come mid game, you're just going to have about 100 to 170 extra health just from running this rune. It's very strong. Revitalize. Heals and shields you cast or received are 5% stronger and increased by an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. So this is primarily for enchanter supports, as they have heals and shields. Champions that primarily only have like a heal in their kit can't really make good use of this, as with with Revitalize or with Forbidden Idol items, they have the split purpose of healing and shielding. It's not like 20% extra healing, but then 5% extra shielding. It's just 5% heals and shields. So if you're not doing both, you're losing a pretty good amount of value. So the champions that make good use out of this are champions like Soraka, champions like Janna, champions like Taric. You could even run this on solo lane champions that heal a lot, champions like Aatrox, maybe champions like Vladimir, etc. If they have like a huge amount of healing in their own kit to heal themselves, Revitalize can be pretty good. Or if you're a supportive champion that heals and shields your ally, then it's also pretty good. Unflinching. After casting a summoner spell, gain 15% tenacity and slow resist for 10 seconds, gaining an additional 10% in slow resist for each summoner spell on cooldown. So this is pretty much for tanks or bruisers that want to get on top of enemies and stay on top of them. Primarily tanks and then a few bruisers, as like let's say Darius would use Ghost and then he would get this. Irelia could use Ignite and she would get this, and Alistar engaging could use Ignite once he's comboed on top of the enemy and then get this. And then what the tenacity and slow resist does, it makes it so that no matter what all the enemy champions are trying to do to keep you off the carry, it lessens the effect because the CC is reduced and then the slow is reduced. You're still going to be taking damage, but your champion's going to be able to stay on top of the target that they've initially got on top. It's a pretty underutilized rune, especially for champions that dive, but with most of those champions, they're not tanky enough to survive anyways. So usually you just see options that give the champion more damage once they're on top of them versus a rune that helps them stay on top of them. So that's the resolve tree again. Just makes the champion more durable, and the durability has different purposes depending on the champion. Okie dokie, last rune tree. These runes are primarily for champions that just don't make any use of the other runes in general. So starting off with Glacial Augment. This is the better of all the keystones in this rune tree. Basic attacking a champion slows them for 2 seconds. This slow increases in strength over its duration. For ranged champions, the slow is less, and then for melee champions, the slow is better. Obviously, being like if a ranged champion could just permanently slow you, that'd be pretty lame. But with a melee champion, since they have to earn their auto attack by getting on top of you, then it makes more sense that it would slow more. Slowing a champion with an active item shoots a freeze ray through them, freezing the nearby ground for 5 seconds, slowing all units inside by 60%. So um, this basically makes it so that whenever you use Twin Shadows, GLP, Righteous Glory, primarily just those items, you could use it on things like Blade of the Rune King. I can't even think of another one. Blade of the Rune King, Randuin's Omen. Like you can use it on things like that, but that's not its primary purpose. The champions that are going to be using it are going to be using it with Twin Shadows, GLP, and then maybe Righteous Glory. So primarily the champions that use this are champions like Vigar, control mages that already have so much damage in their kit that they don't need the other keystones and the other rune pages to like exacerbate the damage in their kit. They also usually have extra scaling in their kit where they don't need the runes as well, which is so bizarre. And then the trade-off is usually that they can't be like wildly like aggressive, but then their defensive capabilities because of the slows from Glacial Augment wildly like enhances their ability to deal damage. So yeah, primarily champions like Vigar make great use out of Glacial Augment because of Twin Shadows and then GLP. Next keystone, Unsealed Spellbook. Swap one of your. Oh, okay, wait. With Glacial Augment 2, where it slows on your auto attacks, it also can help you like set up abilities in the laning phase, and then you do lose a trading tool, but then you gain the utility of the slow, and then if the utility of the slow helps you land an ability that would otherwise outweigh a keystone, then you can get value out of it. Anyways, Unsealed Spellbook, swap one of your equipped summoner spells to a new single-use summoner spell. Each unique summoner spell permanently reduces the swap cooldown. Your first summoner spell swap becomes available at 6 minutes. Summoner spells can only be swapped while out of combat. After using a swap summoner spell, you must swap 3 more times before you can use the first one selected again. So that's all kind of complicated. Basically, the only champions that use this would either be control mages or tanks that don't need the keystones. So champions like Ornn, champions like Orianna, where if they have a one-time teleport or a one-time ignite, one-time barrier, one-time ghost, then it can outweigh the value of keystones. But this rune is very, very like hard to use if you're new to the game, so I really don't even recommend messing around with it. It seems super interesting, but it's really not. It's like you farm a lot early game, you have 1 TP, you maybe use that TP to either interact with another lane or not, or you already are running TP and then you get a one-time ignite so that you have a better trade onto your lane, and then that's that. Or you have a one-time barrier for a team fight, you have a one-time exhaust for a team fight, etc. It's a very hard rune to like use properly, and I don't recommend any new player like even try it out. It's just not worth it. But yeah, again, the champions that would run it would be like Orianna, Ornn, etc. Prototype Omnistone, this rune's new to Season 10, and it's going to have some changes upcoming where it makes it so that it's random, but then it's also based on how much HP you have and whatnot, based on the different keystones it's going to give you. So periodically grant a single use of another random keystone, 8 to 4 second cooldown between using a keystone and gaining the next, and then it's on a 12 to 8 second cooldown for range users. After 40 seconds of not using a given keystone, Omnistone will re-roll when you exit combat. Aftershock is only available to champions who have the ability to trigger it. Predator's only available if you have boots, etc. This rune, the only champion I've ever seen use it successfully is like Gnar top lane. Again, the runes in this tree are like for champions that just don't make good use out of other keystones. So I don't think, unless there's some sort of broken aspect of this rune come mid-season in Season 10, I don't think any champion will use this, other than like as a gimmick, you know? So that's that. I don't recommend any new player even touch this keystone. Next rune, Hextech Flash. Hextech Flash makes it so that whenever your flash is on cooldown, you gain access to Hex Flash. And what Hex Flash is like, you channel it, and then once you channel it, then after a couple seconds, you'll move like a little bit further than where you were, and then it puts you in a position in which you can like engage onto the enemy once you're there. So the champions that primarily use this are supports. So champions like Alistar, Leona, they already use their flash once to engage in a team fight, and then once their flash is on cooldown, they can sit in a bush in lane and then Hextech flash out of it and then get onto the enemy again. So it's kind of like a cheese rune in that sense, but in solo queue it's very, very strong. And then it can also have varying functionality to help you get over walls and whatnot, but it's really not what it's used for. It's primarily used just to like engage onto the enemy who's already lost. Magical footwear. You get free slightly magical boots at 12 minutes. You cannot buy boots before then. For each takedown, you acquire the boots. The boots arrive 45 seconds sooner, and then these boots also give you 10 extra movement speed. So this basically makes it so that you don't have to buy boots. So you save 300 gold. So that's basically what this rune is. So if your champion doesn't have to use boots before 12 minutes, champions like AD carries or mid laners or even top laners, where you're just buying items anyways, even junglers, like if you're just farming early, you just save yourself 300 gold, and then you can just use that gold to buy more items, making you stronger. Perfect timing. Start the game with a commencing stopwatch that transforms into a stopwatch after 10 minutes. Stopwatch has a one-time status effect that is basically like Zanya's, and Zanya is making you invulnerable. And then this rune also makes it so that it reduces the cooldown of Zanya's Guardian Angel and then Gargoyle Stoneplate by 15%, but primarily like champions that are going to run this are either going to be supports or control mages, where let's say mid lane, if you're Syndra to Zed or something, or any mage to Zed, if you run something like this, it's going to make it so that you have the one-time stopwatch to negate his all-in, and then you have a faster build into Zanya's. For supports, it makes it so they have the one-time stopwatch to have a humongous impact in the scope of like a 2v2, a 3v3, or just an all-out team fight in the bot lane. So that's primarily the champions that would be running stopwatch, because if you choose stopwatch, you have to choose it over free boosts. So the value has to be there. Futures market, you can enter debt to buy items. The amount borrowed increases over time. And then it always costs 50 gold to borrow the gold. Champions that want to use this are champions that gain just unfair advantages for having an item sooner than they should physically be able to. So think about a champion mid lane that could get Lost Chapter faster than they otherwise would be able to. They're just going to have more mana and be able to push out a wave that the enemy just can't contest with. You could also use this with supports to get boots of mobility faster, so you can just start roaming faster than you otherwise would be able to. And if the enemy like can't deal with it, then you make up for the 50 gold cost completely. But if you're spending this for like just like as a luxury thing, then it's not so useful. You always want to be using it for something that gives you like a pressure. So like let's say a Tiamat top lane, a Lost Chapter mid lane, and then like boots of mobility bot lane. That's primarily the only functions of futures market. So to get those items faster than is physically possible otherwise. Minion dematerializers. Start the game with 3 minion dematerializers that basically just insta kill a minion, and then they give you more damage to that particular type of minion. This helps you. It helps champions like Anivia, Xerath, Ziggs, like wave clear champions, to just have more damage onto like melee minions or caster minions, and then yeah, be able to push out a wave way faster. So even if the enemy's like 4 manning, 3 manning like a mid tower, then they can defend it. Very strong rune. It also helps with being able to push the wave faster. Biscuit delivery. Biscuit delivery, gain a total biscuit of everlasting will every 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes you gain a biscuit. Whenever you use the biscuit, it restores 10% of your missing health and mana, and then it also permanently increases your mana by 50. So, and then you can also sell these and then still get the maximum mana increase. So you get 4 of these. So they can either give you about 120 gold, or they can be used in the laning phase to have access to more mana that you otherwise wouldn't have, because where they restore your missing mana, you can completely spend your entire mana pool and then use these and then still be able to like stay in the lane. So it can be, it's like it can be used as like a sustain tool, an all-in tool, a laning tool for the mana, or just for the gold and then the extra mana. So pretty multi-purpose rune. And generally useful in a lot of champions because of that. Cosmic Insight, you gain 5% cooldown reduction, 5% maximum cooldown reduction, meaning that you can go over the 40% cooldown reduction cap, and then 5% summoner spell cooldown reduction, and then 5% item cooldown reduction. And item cooldown reduction meaning for active items like Ghostblade, Righteous Glory, Redemption, etc. This rune's like generally useful. Depending on the champion that you're playing, I can't think of like a champion that like it really does it makes or breaks their champion, but yeah, most champions like the 5% even over like the cap isn't like wildly game changing. Approach velocity, gain 15% movement speed toward nearby allies that are movement impaired or enemy champions that you impair. So this is like the champions that use this best are champions with self slows like Olaf and Ashe, where they can slow the enemy themselves and then they just get more movement speed at the enemy for slowing the enemy. It's so weird for champions like that. So that's primarily what it's used for. It can also be used on enchanter supports as they can kind of do the same, but then they also get more movement speed toward their allies who are being attacked usually. And then the last rune, Time Warp Tonic. Consuming a potion or biscuit grants 50% of its health and mana regeneration immediately and puts that consumable on a short cooldown. And then you also gain 5% movement speed for the duration. So this is usually used by solo laners as their corrupting pot can be used and then you immediately get so much health and mana. So this helps during all ins. It helps when you're taking trades in lane. It helps when you're like basically like the first 4 levels can be very volatile in solo lanes, and having the extra health immediately can really make or break like being able to push a wave or like have threat on the enemy or not. The extra movement speed is like icing on the cake, man. It makes it so that your corrupting pot is useful at all stages of the game. Especially for champions that don't have dashes or whatnot, it makes it so that they can position in the lane and like actually, catch an enemy out or hit an ability or whatnot. So yeah, that's literally every single rune in League of Legends. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I replied to literally all of them. Please like this video if you got all the way through. I mean, I did put some time into it, and then if you're interested in support gameplay or just trying to watch some League of Legends in Season 10, you can check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. I also have a Twitter, but don't worry about it, man. That's that. Thanks for watching. Really hoped it helped. Alrighty. Bye-bye. See ya. That's all the runes, man. Bye-bye. See you later. See ya.